Republican lawmakers are still looking out for corporate interests and pushing this idea that unemployment benefits that were part of the coronavirus relief package need to end prematurely in order to ensure that American workers are so desperate that they have no choice but to take low-paying jobs that pay them a starvation wage. Now, Senator Lindsey Graham is certainly part of that effort. And during a recent hearing with the Senate Budget Committee, he asked the acting chair of the Office of Management and Budget some questions about what should be done about the extra $300 a week in unemployment benefits that are being provided to laid off workers during the coronavirus pandemic.
A bunch of states are basically canceling the federal unemployment benefit for their state because they believe it hinders the ability to hire people back as the economy reemerges from the COVID pandemic. Their belief is that the enhanced unemployment benefit is deterring people from re-entering into the workforce. There's a lot of jobs out there that are unfilled and will never be filled until you change the benefit structure. Does that logic make sense to you, given where we're at in our economy?
I understand the logic, but I've also not met Americans who would prefer not to work. There's a dignity to work in this country that most Americans.
Well, I got a lot of people in my family that ain't working because they're getting. I'll show you some in my family.
Willing to throw members of his own, I mean, look, I don't know if he's telling the truth or if he's just saying that to bolster his ridiculous argument. But the fact that he's willing to throw family members under the bus by essentially referring to them as like these lazy bums gives you all that you need to know about who Lindsey Graham really is as a person. Now, if you look at the actual reality of the situation, and we've talked about this so many times that I feel like I've been like so repetitive on this issue. The $300 a week in federal unemployment benefits is not the leading cause of why people are not going back to work, okay? First off, I do find it fascinating that Republican lawmakers and some corporate Democrats as well are calling into question these, unemployment benefits under this. And by the way, this ends in September. This is not an indefinite program to help add additional funds to the state unemployment programs. No, this is a temporary program that was put in place by Biden's coronavirus relief package in order to ensure that Americans who lost their jobs through no fault of their own have the ability to pay their rent, to provide food on the table for their families, to be able to take care of what they need to take care of as the economy gets back up and running. But Republicans have been attacking it from day one. They don't want to encourage corporations to maybe pay their workers more, to encourage them to come back to work. But more importantly, if employees are being contacted by their employers to come back to work and they say, no, I'm not interested, I'm more interested in sitting back and collecting unemployment, guess what happens? They lose their unemployment benefits. Every person collecting unemployment benefits right now has to make it clear that they're currently looking for work. And again, if their former employer who laid them off as a result of the pandemic is reaching out to them and saying, hey, we're ready for you to come back to work, and they say no, they lose the benefits. No one ever mentions that. Certainly Republicans don't ever mention that, but I think that's an important point to keep in mind. Also, Graham and Republican lawmakers like him don't want to fund anything that seems to help ordinary Americans. Now, they might use these rhetorical tricks to make it seem as though they're populist and they're looking out for workers. But in reality, when push comes to shove, anytime there's even a discussion about providing additional funding for workers, for ordinary Americans as a result or as opposed to providing funding for corporate welfare, they're against it. But there is one thing that Lindsey Graham is always in favor of increasing funds for. And of course, it has to do with the military, the Defense Department. This was his follow-up question during the exact same hearing. Watch.
On the defense side, how do you see the world right now in terms of threats that the United States and our allies face? Is it small, large, medium?
While I'm not a national security expert, it's clear the world remains a complex place with a lot of dangerous players. I think General Mattis said it best. A reduction there means he has to buy more bullets. So what you see when you don't see the defense numbers where you want them is a reinvestment in our diplomacy, making sure that this complex environment, this complex world we live in is not all handled militarily.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I'll end on this, Mr. Chairman. The president's budget, I think, ups the foreign ops subcommittee, I think, to $62 billion. That's still less than 1%. Count me in for more spending on soft power. It does make sense. But it is by no means a substitute for having a robust military with a qualitative advantage.
In his recent proposed budget, Biden gave the Defense Department what they asked for. Now, obviously, that proposal needs to be approved by Congress. And when it comes to the military budget, there's never any real debate about whether or not it passes. But again, in the exact same hearing, I mean, Lindsey Graham goes from these unemployment benefits, not good, not good. And he doesn't like the federal government spending money on ordinary Americans. That's what this is really about. And also, he wants to ensure his corporate donors are happy by ensuring that Americans are so desperate that they'll literally take starvation wages to go back to work. But when it comes to government spending on the military, there is no number that's considered too high for Lindsey Graham. Let's do a little bit of a comparison here, because I think that's important. So as I mentioned earlier, the unemployment benefits through the American Rescue Plan that was passed by the Biden administration is a temporary program. It ends in September. So this is not a yearly thing, it's not an annual thing like the defense budget is. Now, in terms of the defense budget, the Biden-Harris administration submitted to Congress the president's fiscal year 2022 budget request of $752.9 billion for national defense, $715 billion of which is for the Department of Defense. All right, so that's quite a bit of money, right? And this is an annual spending bill that unfortunately gets approved every single time with no real debate. But when it comes to this one-time appropriation of funds for unemployment benefits, are we anywhere near $700 billion? No. The relief package included $206 billion for unemployment benefits, a one-time appropriation because of the coronavirus pandemic. They got to nickel and dime you guys like crazy because you're not worth it. You're not worth it to them. I mean, we heard Reagan's former economic advisor literally say that to the American people on national television during a Fox News interview. Laffer said this, that the poor don't deserve $15 an hour. You think that Laffer's the only one who has that kind of mentality? No, corporate goons, including corporate executives and corporate Democrats and Republicans, feel the same way. There's no other way to slice it. That's what the reality of the situation is. But when it comes to bombs, when it comes to weaponry, when it comes to destabilizing other countries with our nonsense and our business interests, there's no amount that's high enough. No amount that's high enough. That's Lindsey Graham for you. So anytime you hear these goons pretend as if they care about working Americans, just understand that they don't think you're worth it. They don't think you're worth even $15 an hour, which at this point isn't even a living wage in most parts of the country.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.